Welcome to Non-Diet Your Coaching Podcast. I'm Stephanie Dodier, clinical nutritionist and creator of the Going to Beyond the Food method, and I'm on a mission to help all coaches undiet their life and their coaching business. Ready? Let's do this. Hello, my dear colleagues, and welcome back to Undiet Your Coaching Podcast. And today we have an interview where I'm inviting some of our students within the Non-Diet Mentorship Program or a mastermind program, these coaches that have very inspiring journey inside and outside of our program. And I want them to share with you how they have created their result, their transformation, whatever, be it personally or in their business, and the gap that they had to bridge in order to get where they are today. I believe that their story have very valuable information for you to hear. And we're also going to highlight some of the concept we're teaching in our professional training. So today I have on the podcast, Renae. Welcome to the show, Renae.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So give us a little bit of introduction. Who is Renae, both personal and professionally? And we're going to get started talking from there.
Sure. So I'm Renae Bartlett. I'm a nutritionist trained, now non-diet coach or non-diet nutritionist. My very brief background, I was a military veteran for 12 years and I've been a civilian for almost 10. And in that time, I've been working towards creating myself as a nutritionist in my own business. And I am a mum of two, currently living in Canada, but about to return to Australia. Yeah.
How old are your kids? Tell people.
They are 3.5 and 18 months. Yeah.
Yeah, you blow my mind all the time. You have two little kids, two little one at home, and here she is attending all of our coaching calls and doing all the work in the program, like seamlessly.
Oh, well, thank you, Stephanie. But I think being able to have them in daycare and having the support at home really helps as well. But then it helps when you really enjoy what you're doing. And I've absolutely loved the program. So it's made it a joy to actually want to show up. So that's a good thing.
So here's what I admire you for your journey and the work we've done together is how you came into this program, being a nutritionist, being trained scientifically, being trained to do the nutritionist thing, which is to tell people what to eat and when to eat and how to eat. And you came to this program wanting to learn coaching, and how phenomenally you have embodied coaching in your nutrition practice, and the client result that I kept hearing about and your own result in your life. So if you don't mind sharing with people how it was for you to learn coaching, and perhaps what you thought coaching was and what you actually discovered that coaching is, and how it has changed your own practice.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. Coaching has been phenomenal. And within my business and coaching my clients has been a real shift, because for the first time, I've actually seen my clients getting results, but for themselves. It hasn't been from me telling them what to do. They go away and do it, and then they come back. So if I can share what I used to experience as a nutritionist was they would come to me, maybe 1 or 2 sessions. I'd give them a very well thought out meal plan or healing protocol or treatment protocol to go away with. And they would come back to me and they would always feel like they disappointed me if they hadn't done it perfectly, or felt like they couldn't stick to aspects of it and therefore they didn't come back to me because there was shame, or they felt like they had to keep coming back to me and there was this real reliance. Whereas now I've noticed this massive shift in that my clients that work with me are figuring out the process on themselves with me gently guiding them, and simply by asking really powerful and insightful questions, getting curious with them and their story. And that's what's really changed, because as a nutritionist, I was very much following a template of questions to ask. And even if I was going a little bit freestyle, my agenda was still, I need to tell them what to do. I'm the guru. I know more than them. They've come to me and they're paying for me to give them that advice. Whereas now I see it completely different, that we're on the same level. I'm just guiding them to see, themselves and be trusting within themselves. And if I link it back to what the reason why I'm now able to do that is because I've learned to do that in myself. The coaching that I take my clients through is exactly the same process that I've learned to do in myself, that I now trust myself as a coach. I trust myself in all facets, that I can now help my clients do the same. And that's the whole other level that I didn't expect. That's, I didn't know that that's what coaching does. So that was a big change.
It's fascinating how we're both trained in being nutritionists. And I know for me, they were telling us that this was coaching, right? Get clients in your office, sell them a 2-pack, a 3-pack session, give them their meal plan and tell them what to do. And now you're coaching them.
Yeah.
And if they struggle, then you give them tips on how to do the things, right? Scheduling or better time management, like what we call coaching in the action line. And then I honestly thought this was coaching. And the same thing for you.
Yeah, it was. And you're right. I thought that I was doing some kind of coaching, and I thought that I was, my clients would come to me and I was just kind of formulating what they were saying and putting it back to them in this beautiful spreadsheet of, here's the food to eat. But that actually wasn't the case at all. It was very surface level, very behavior driven, but not actually getting to the deeper layers that really helps people change.
And that's the thing that I've seen with you is how you were willing to take the coaching, right? Like take the coaching framework and applying it to your client. And in the beginning, you were really focused on people that had chronic illness. I remember you working with someone that had diabetes. I think that was one of your first clients within our program, and how transformational applying coaching was to her and her result, and how mind blown you were yourself that your client was getting those results.
Yeah, because I'd never witnessed that before as a nutritionist. I never had. It was crazy. And just really, and that was the other thing in the coaching, is coaching myself around my belief with health. Because as you know, coming from a background as a nutritionist, we're well entrenched in you have to control your health. And if you're not trying to control it, then what's going on? That was a really big shift. And that was actually a breath of fresh air for my clients to see that it's completely okay that you're unwell. It's completely okay that these things have happened to you. That's part of the human experience. We just learn how to care for ourselves in a way that isn't controlling, that actually helps us experience life and enjoy it without this need to control everything. So it was actually really great to see that in my clients, that shift as well.
Do you feel more rewarded? I don't know if reward is the right term, but do you feel more fulfilled in being a nutritionist in this way than the past?
100%. So much so that before I stumbled across the non-diet world, I was ready to quit nutrition. Yeah, there was probably about 2 or 3 times where I went, no, this just isn't for me. And I couldn't put my finger on it because on one hand, I was so passionate about helping people with their health and nutrition and all of that side of things. But then there was something that just didn't fit, but something kept pulling me back in. And I think when I started to go, I'm going to learn to do things on my own terms and start to see if I can learn how to coach. And then long story short, ended up finding your program, and then everything just changed. And I'm like, right, I understand. I just had to change the way that I was doing things. And now it's fantastic. The rewarding is, I just love it. I get so much energy when I am in my coaching sessions with my clients and after, which I never used to have.
Yeah, because when we coach versus when what we call, I just want to give some background to people. when we are a trained nutritionist, a traditionally trained nutritionist, we think we're coaching, but in fact, what we're doing is consulting, right? We have a problem and we have our expertise in our brain, and then we formulate a how to. We formulate step 1 to 15. This is what you have to do. Take the package. Good luck. I'll see you in a month and a half from now for a follow-up. That's not coaching. Now, we think it is, but it's not. That's consulting. It's like, I often give the example of learning to ride a bike, right? You have the manual on how to ride the bike. That's consulting. And then you have the parent holding the bike behind and cheering up their kid and picking them up from the ground and putting them back on. That's coaching. And when you coach as a nutritionist, you obviously go much deeper because you're not just telling people what to do. And for me, I know that was the reward, is seeing people grow beyond the food, which has become the name of my company, but like well beyond the food, like that the work I was doing with food was like affecting all these other parts of their life without me intentionally doing it, but that was the ripple effect of it.
Yeah. And I've experienced the same thing now. A client that I've got at the moment, she even stopped me mid-session. She said, wow, this is way more than nutrition and I love it. And I'm like, it is. It absolutely is. So, yeah.
And it's the same thing, like you said, like it's because you've learned to do it with yourself. And I think that's what I think makes it that it's not coaching what we learn in nutrition schools, because we don't learn to coach ourselves. We learn to like tell people what to do. But the key in coaching is learning to coach ourselves, seeing the impact of it, and then transferring that to other people.
Yeah.
And I know for you, when you were going through the program, you were looking for, at the beginning, we're looking for what most science people are looking for, which is the step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the very logical approach to things. The transformation in personally, like as a human being, has been phenomenal to actually like connecting to your own higher self, as opposed to looking for like the step-by-step approach and the science-based approach, but more like you trusting yourself.
Yeah. And that I think has been one of the biggest things that has been a huge step for me personally and in my business, because when you begin to trust yourself, it like you can take that anywhere. You know, I don't have to be waiting for when the next guru is available to take me, or when I've saved up that money to pay someone to tell me what to do. I can figure it out myself. And that has been the most amazing thing. And it makes a more authentic business, which I'm now starting to create. And it's a completely new experience for me. And I'm really enjoying working in my business. It's great.
Because you don't have to follow somebody else's standards or way of doing things. You can do your own thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're just creating it yourself.
So let's talk about niching, because niching goes into that, right? Niching for you has been an experience where you had to coach yourself a lot in order to land where you are now. But talk to me about how you experience trying to find your niche through this program.
So what I found with the niching is, and something that you spoke about, is it's an earlier version of you. It's something that is part of you, something you've gone through. And for me, I was like, well, there's so many different parts of me and my story. And so I felt a little bit confused. But what I did is I went, okay, I'm going to take an aspect that I've learned in the coaching, which is stop trying to control it. Let's just go through the process and see what comes. And in coaching myself, I ended up learning a whole lot more about myself, or reminding myself who I was, and having the courage to just try something and just be curious, which is another really big aspect. And so initially I started working with women with chronic illness, and that felt really great. That is part of my journey and my story. But then, as it was highlighted to me, and I'd actually figured it out only a week prior through my own coaching, was that, wait a minute, why am I not working with people that are in the military, women in the military, or veterans, or women with emergency service background? Because when I look back at my client history, not even just recently, but even in the last couple of years, it's all been from that background, but I'd never seen it. I'd never taken notice of that. So my coaching in figuring out who I am not only enabled me to see that, but then gave me the coaching and trust to lean into that, because I did have some resistance. And so I worked through that in my own coaching, and that has now given me the courage to lean into it and get curious again with this. And it feels great. It really does.
Can you talk about the resistance? Because I think that's where a lot of owners are stuck, is they have this knowing of who they want to work with, but they feel resistance. So they're thinking, well, that must not be right because I'm feeling the resistance to go and work with these people. So what was that resistance you felt?
I think the resistance came from a few things. I think firstly, because I don't know anyone else that is doing intuitive eating for military veterans. So I was like, well, can that actually really work? Yeah. I was second guessing whether there was people that would even want that service. And then I was even looking at myself and going, am I the right person for this? You know, a little bit of that imposter syndrome, which I must say through coaching has well and truly dimmed. I think it's one of those things that'll always be there, but I can now manage it. So I think they were my biggest things is, are people going to pay for this? Am I the right person? And, you know, is this going to be the right fit for me? A resistance I used to have was, oh, but am I just going to be wasting time if this doesn't fit? And I don't have that anymore. I'm like, no, just get out there and give it a go. Be curious in it, because you don't know unless you actually try it. And I'm willing to give it a try. And it feels great, because this is the first time that I've gone, it feels a little bit uncomfortable. And that's probably the right direction I want to be going in, because it's just pushing me just that little bit. So, yeah.
So I want to talk about the niche drama and the way we learn about it in our program. Like, first thing is, you're listening to this and you're a non-diet coach, a non-diet therapist, a non-diet whatever. That's your niche. The non-diet approach, helping people through fill the blank, whatever you're helping them with, without restricting or wanting to shrink their body, that's a niche in itself. So when we talk about niche here, I'm having this conversation about niche. I'm more having a conversation around what we call the ideal client. Who is this person that we're the best suited to work with? Which one that who we are, our lived experience is best suited to help and understand. So when we are talking about who you were as a military person, that person that works under high pressure, that I want to say like that's constrained to a lot of rules and regulation and a lot of like processes, that is a person that you can relate to, that you can get. People will talk to you and they say, oh, she gets me. She understands. Like, your personality is well suited to work with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and you can understand them, right? You're telling a story on a coaching call about this woman who's a pilot, I think, that you're working with. And right away, I think it was about like imposter syndrome. I can't remember the topic you were working with, but right away you understood why she was thinking this way, because of patriarchy and how she's the only female in her role. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Having an ideal client is like zeroing in on an identity, a person you get, and that they will feel heard and you will be able to fast track their result. Do you mind talking a little bit about that story about that pilot?
Yeah. So what she experienced, which is really common for military women, is the need to constantly have to prove yourself because you are in a male-dominated career. And it's something that unless you've experienced it in that career, you don't really understand it, because it's not like it's just this environment. It's just this feeling. And every woman that I've ever spoken to and worked alongside has that experience. And when she was sharing it with me, I was able to ask questions so specific that said that I got it, that it took the need off her to need to continue explaining it. And it gave her a lot of safety in then being able to share even more with me, or to go, oh yeah, she gets me. I trust her in this process. And she even said to me, the great thing is that she doesn't need to over explain it. She knows that I've got it. And it allows me to ask very specific questions to help get even more information, exactly what you said, to fast track it, because I get it. I can kind of bypass the trying to understand the situation because I already get it. We can just get straight to the work, essentially. Yeah.
That's ideal client. That's like, if anybody listening to this, like if you're quote struggling, this is the ideal client. You want to determine that person for you, that you're going to be able to get that. Mostly what I have found is your lived experience has prepared you to be such an efficient coach with.
Yeah.
That nobody else than you is better equipped to help this particular person. And you want to niche down, quote niche, but you want to narrow down to that level and become the person who helped these kinds of people.
Yeah, exactly right. And it gives, even as a coach too, it gives you confidence, because you go in there knowing that the situations that people are going to talk about, even though you haven't been there, you have a pretty good idea or understanding, or you've gone through it before. And that's really empowering, I think, for both the coach and the client.
And I want to leave everybody, we're going to go to another subject, but that's the difference between ideal client versus niche, because in your past niche, people with chronic illness, that's a traditional niche, and you could end up with all kinds of various people from the military, moms, and you're not necessarily best skilled or lived experience to help those people. You just have a traditional niche, that chronic illness, where working with women in emergency military services, it's a whole different angle.
Yeah.
It's going to make it so much easier for you to sell too, because you know exactly what they need to hear.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And even for content creation, everything, it's just, I know the words to say, and it's good. It's so much easier.
So I want to close this interview with talking about like two wins or two of your biggest learning on becoming a nutritionist who coach the non-diet approach that could help other people listening to this interview.
Yeah, I've had a lot of wins, but I think the two biggest have been that I can trust myself. I don't have to rely on somebody else to tell me what to do, to give me a template. And it's incredibly freeing, because you get to be so authentic and trust in that process, which is a really big game changer. You're not handing over your trust to somebody else. And I liken it to the process that we take our clients through in the non-diet approach, where they learn to trust their bodies as intuitive eating, and we learn to trust ourselves as business owners. So that's been the biggest thing. And the second one is that how incredibly powerful self-coaching and mindset work is. And if you've listened to Stephanie's words before, you will hear, her say that mindset is everything, and that what you do in one thing is in another part of your life, and you understand that. But once you go through the process yourself in this program, you really can see it, and it's absolutely life-changing, not only for me, but for my clients. So that's been the biggest thing.
And I bet you with your family too.
Oh, yeah. Especially with my kids, my little one. Yeah. Going back down to that, okay, she's reacting this way from her feelings and thoughts and doing that. So yeah, it's great.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because as clinician, whatever your background is, again, listening to this as a therapist, wherever you've been trained clinically, you've been trained at the intellectual level. You've not been trained in embodying the thing you do. As long as you completed a series of exams and you understand all the intellectual concept, you got your certificate, your diploma, and you were good to go. It wasn't required that you actually live the thing. In fact, you couldn't live the thing because you were the expert in all those processes. When you learn coaching, to me, the significant difference is that you have to live it for yourself first. You have to be able to embody it in your own life in order to be able to coach other people. That's what you're talking about, embodiment.
Yeah, embodiment. And it's so true. You talked about that so many times, and now 100% can see it, because it's exactly right. And in 6 months, like where I was in January to the end of June, completely different.
You're for me, the way I've seen you, you're a different person, at least with the identity of a nutritionist and a business owner. You are a different person from 6 months ago.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Have you seen that with your partner? Like, has he reflected that on you?
He hasn't, but I think in our conversations, I think if I share very quickly, he asked me if I was going to get a certification in life coaching, because I said I think I do a lot more life coaching as well as intuitive eating. And when I said no, he was quite shocked, because I'm somebody that's always been about getting the certificates. And I was able to very easily explain why, and he was very satisfied with my answer. So I think that's where he's noticed the difference, is that I'm not trying to go out and get all these courses under my belt. So
why are you not?
Because
you don't mind explaining people.
Yeah, because I am a coach. I don't need a certificate to tell me otherwise, because I believe it in every core of my body. And that all that was happening beforehand for me was I needed a certificate to give me that confidence, but I had to keep chasing the certificate because I never felt the confidence. I now feel the confidence, so I don't need the certificate.
You create the confidence.
That's exactly right.
On demand.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. That's the thing about coaching. When we learn how to coach, at least in the way we teach how to coach, is you can create your feelings on demand. Like, I know you're listening to this right now. For people, they're like, what are they talking about? But you can.
Yeah.
You can create your feeling on demand.
You can. You absolutely can. I've been practicing it, and you definitely can do it. Yeah.
And that's where you don't need the piece of paper on the wall anymore, because the confidence you think is going to come with the piece of paper actually never comes.
Yep.
And you still feel unconfident, even though you have the piece of paper on the wall. You can create it by the way you're thinking. And that's where embodiment to me is so powerful, because you know you're a coach because you coach yourself dozens of times every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's been another big shift for me, is that I don't need a certificate to coach. I'm a coach. And I'm excellent at it, and I'm confident in it. So, yeah.
And we can see when we coach ourselves moment to moment in a day, we see the power of coaching. Like, we don't need a list of benefit and intellectual and research property. We're like, no. Like, here's all the benefit in my own life of what coaching has done and it's doing for me now. Like, I know this shit works.
Yeah.
I just know it works. Anything else you want to share with our audience listening to this before we end this powerful interview?
No, I think that's it. But I think if you're even slightly inclined to work with Stephanie, or, where it's taken me in my business is just incredible. And it's the best investment I've ever made, I think, in working with you. It really has, because I've just learned so much professionally and personally that will continue on, which is great. Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is, if you don't need another certificate, that means you're going to also save money in the future.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Because when we chase the certificate and the course, we just keep chasing, expenses to pay more. But when we can find a way of not needing that in the future, yes, it's an investment up front, but we end up saving a ton of money in the future.
Yeah. Yep, that's right.
Again, I just want to reinforce how much of a transformation from a nutritionist, a standard clinical nutritionist, to who you are today. It's been magnificent to watch. And I know it's going to be really inspiring for other dietitian and nutritionists stuck in the regular grind, not being fulfilled, to see what is possible when you integrate coaching in your practice.
Great. Thank you so much for saying that.
Thank you, Renae. You guys, I'll see you on the next podcast. Ready to shed diet culture from your practice and help more clients do the same? Awesome. We've got 3 resources to get you started. Simply go to stephaniedodier.com/ Pro Series, all in one word, and access our 3 free training classes that are currently available. We also have a free PDF guide to intuitive eating, an article about the non-diet approach. We also offer a variety of paid programs throughout the year to support you in your journey to undiet your coaching practice. Join us at stephaniedodier.com/pro series, and I'll see you on the other side.